Morocco, a frantic search for survivors is underway as the death toll soars above 1,300 following a powerful earthquake that struck overnight. That number is expected to rise as rescuers make their way into more remote areas. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom and our special coverage of the earthquake in Morocco. We're dedicating the entirety of this newscast to the events there. Now, the quake had a magnitude of 6.8, and according to the U.S. Geologic Survey, it's the strongest to hit the country in more than 120 years. It struck after 11 p.m. local time on Friday and was centered in the High Atlas Mountains, about 72 kilometers from the city of Marrakesh. Now, at this hour, the death toll stands at 1,305. That number will undoubtedly rise in the coming hours and days. Also, at least 1,800 people were injured. 721 of them are reported in critical condition. Now, as rescue workers comb through the rubble looking for survivors, we're hearing some firsthand accounts of what it was like when the quake struck. CCTV footage captured the terrifying moments. People are describing moments of horror and, tragically, the loss of family members and loved ones. Damage has been widespread across western Morocco, in rural villages, and in Marrakesh, a city of more than 1 million people. We begin our coverage with this report from Nick Rushworth.
People headed out into the streets, afraid to stay indoors, fearing possible aftershocks after the quake struck. This historic minaret and other buildings in Marrakesh were damaged. The city was just a few dozen kilometers from the epicenter.
We felt the strength and intensity of the tremor in our building 2 or 3 times. People came out into the street right after this in total panic. And there were families who were still sleeping outside because we're very afraid of the force of the tremor.
The epicenter of the quake was southwest of Marrakesh in the province of Al Houz. This Google map shows the extent of the impact, with tremors felt as far away as Rabat, Agadir and Casablanca, hundreds of kilometers away.
I was on the roof of my house, enjoying the fresh air, when suddenly I felt vibrations. They seemed really close. At first I heard a metal object fall. I thought it was a cat. But I heard people screaming, and I realized it was an earthquake.
The authorities expect the death toll to rise. Most victims are villagers in mountainous areas in the High Atlas region. Moroccan media report this is the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in the country.
Well, as we just saw, a massive rescue effort is underway as crews search for survivors. Earthquakes of this size are rare for the region, and experts say that buildings are simply not constructed to withstand them. Many buildings have indeed collapsed. Rescuers are struggling to reach some of the hardest-hit remote areas, even as desperate efforts are underway to save those who are trapped. For more, let's cross to Benoit Carpentier, communications manager for the International Federation of the Red Cross. He joins us from Geneva. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. I assume the Red Cross has teams on the ground in Morocco. What are you hearing from them in terms of the scale of this disaster?
Good evening. Yes, we have teams on the ground with the Moroccan Red Crescent who have been active from the early hours or minutes after the disaster. For now, it's very, very complicated to get a full picture of the situation on the ground. As you said, the epicenter was in a remote area in the mountains, so it's going to take days, if not weeks, to have the real scale of what's going on the ground. So for now, we are dealing with the emergency, which is to the search and rescue operations, and to try to find survivors. And that's the most important operation at the moment for the next 48 to 72 hours. But while we are doing that, we're also looking at taking care of the survivors, the people that have been injured. Hospital are full of people, so we are trying to look at doing all that at the same time.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about how the Red Cross is responding to this disaster. How do you go about getting the resources and personnel where they need to be?
So the Moroccan Red Crescent has more than 8,000 volunteers across the country. So they are almost in every community across the country. So they are there and being able to support them, the population that has been affected. In the days and hours in the days to come, we will need to probably scale up the operation and bringing more aid from from outside of the country to be able to provide all the help that is needed in all the affected areas.
We know. I'm sorry for interrupting you. Please continue.
No, my point was about the logistics. That's going to be one of the key struggle that we're going to have to deal with because of the mountainous areas, accessing the people there, assessing what the scale of the disaster, and then bringing the needed aid there is going to be one of the key challenges of the operation.
Yeah, certainly logistics challenges there. We know that more than 1,300 people have been killed. That number is expected to rise. You mentioned that there have been, many hundreds of people have been hurt. What do we know about the seriousness of their injuries?
It's for earthquakes like that, you have a lot of people that have broken bones, or you have things that have been falling on them, so you have a lot of injuries like that. But it's not just the physical injuries that we have to deal with, also the psychological trauma that people have gone through. And it's not finished because there's risk of aftershocks. People are still in the streets. They can't get back to their houses because it's not safe. So it's all these components that we need to deal with at the same time.
What are the most pressing needs at this moment in time?
The main needs are going to be obviously shelter for all the people that have lost their houses, but it's also going to be drinking water, potable water, food. What we're trying to really avoid is having another disaster on top of that disaster. So all the sanitary measures will need to be really looked into very quickly to make sure we avoid any disease spreading. What the Moroccan Red Crescent is doing also in collaboration with the local authorities is the management of the dead bodies, to also make sure that there's no spreading of diseases.
You're talking about immediate needs there. What about the long-term recovery? What kind of long-term requirements will there be as Morocco looks to recover from this disaster?
It's going to be, as we say, a marathon. So there's the acute phase at the moment, and as I was saying, the search and rescue is the operation at the moment that is what we're focusing on, and taking care of the survivors. But the recovery phase is going to take weeks, months, and years, probably, depending on the scale that unfolds over the next few days.
And if our viewers want to help the Red Cross, your efforts to help those in Morocco, what can they do?
So we've just released 1 million Swiss francs from our disaster response emergency fund, and we have partner nationalities that are also launching appeals in different countries, emergency appeals, so people can donate to those, and then we'll probably launch an appeal at the federation level also, where people can give money. The idea is to have a coordinated response to that. So often people want to send goods, which is highly appreciated, but it's very difficult logistically to arrange. So having the cash necessary to be able to deliver what people really need on the ground is really important.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Benoit Carpentier, Communications Manager for the International Federation of the Red Cross, joining us from Geneva. Thanks so much for being with us here on France 24. Well, reaction to the earthquake continues to pour in from across the globe. Leaders attending the G20 summit in India this weekend are expressing their condolences and are vowing to send aid. The events even prompted Algeria, which cut ties with Morocco 2 years ago, to open its airspace for humanitarian flights. We get more on that part of the story from Nick Rushworth.
There have been condolences and expressions of support worldwide for the people of Morocco following the earthquake that struck late on Friday night. The French President, Emmanuel Macron, said online that we are all devastated after the terrible earthquake in Morocco. France stands ready to help with emergency assistance. That offer was made too by Spain. Its foreign minister reacted while at the G20 summit in India. He said resources would be made available once requested.
We want to show our solidarity to Morocco and the Moroccan people, and also extend our condolences to the victims.
The Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, who is hosting the G20 summit, said he was extremely pained by the loss of lives due to the earthquake, and said the entire world community was with Morocco at this difficult time. Other messages included one by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Turkey and Syria were hit by a massive quake in February. Erdogan, in a message online, offered support to the Moroccan people in every way in this difficult hour.
And for people who have loved ones in Morocco, it's been a gut-wrenching and emotional time. Let's cross now to Abu Bakr Jamaya, professor of international relations at the American College of the Mediterranean at Aix-en-Provence. Thanks for being with us here on France 24. You have expertise in international politics, but you also have family members in Morocco who you've been in contact with. So first of all, how are they doing? Are they all right? And what have they been able to tell you about what they're going through?
Well, first, thank you for having me and thank you for asking. I'm fortunate enough that my family hasn't suffered any consequences because of the earthquake. So they're all doing fine. I have part of my family is in Marrakesh, and that probably was the part of the family that panicked the most because, as you've already mentioned, Marrakesh was one of the parts that was harder hit, I would say, compared to the other big cities.
Have they experienced aftershocks? Are they afraid of another big jolt?
That's the big, the big message that is whirling around through WhatsApp groups, etc. Is the idea that tonight we'll see another shock. So people are really afraid of what might happen tonight. I don't know where the information is coming from, but there is this fear that there will be a major aftershock in the coming hours.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that your family's doing okay. Well, so you're a professor of international relations. So switching gears a bit, in general terms, what is the current situation politically in Morocco, and how might that affect the flow of aid to the country in this time of need?
Well, let's start with the silver lining. The silver lining is that I would say that Algeria has expressed pretty rapidly its support to Morocco and its solidarity, and that's good news because the relationship has been pretty tense. You mentioned in your report that Algeria had cut diplomatic ties with Morocco. Another, of course, positive development is the number of head of states who have declared their support to Morocco. So that's on the positive side. On the negative side, the belatedness with which the Moroccan authorities have communicated is pretty unsettling. And also, I mentioned that my family was safe because we are fortunate enough to be part of the middle class, etc. And this earthquake has hit the hardest the poor people in Morocco, which underscores one of the features of the Moroccan society and economy. It is still a country which is in the low income category of the World Bank. We have still a lot of poor people. Morocco's HDI ranking, Human Development Index ranking, put us just above all the countries that are stricken by civil wars in the Arab world. The only countries that are worse than Morocco are Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and I think Djibouti. So this underscores the fact that, structurally speaking, although some positive evolution has happened in fighting poverty, we have still a long way to go. And when I say poverty, one of the people who have suffered the most are people who are living in villages in mud brick built houses, which is a sign of great poverty. And these were the ones who have suffered the most from this earthquake.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about, you were saying that the Moroccan officials have been slow to sort of ask for help. Is that what you're saying?
No, first of all, we still don't know as of now whether the Moroccan authorities have officially accepted the aid and the help that had been proposed by all the countries that have proposed to help. So as of now, we don't know. And we know full well, experts on natural disasters know that the first hours are absolutely crucial in that type of situations. So as of now, we don't know whether the Moroccan authorities have accepted, because they have to accept this aid and this help. So that's one. The second thing is that the institution in the country that is really equipped to deal with this type of natural disaster is the army. And from what I heard and know, the army has only started has entered into action only today at midday, which is pretty late because the earthquake struck yesterday just after 11 p.m.
Well, so France is a former colonial power, Morocco, of course. It has already pledged to help with the recovery. Do you expect Paris to play a major role when it comes to international assistance?
Well, the same way, I hope that the other countries who have proposed to help will help. I do hope that France will help, and Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, have proposed that. Now we do know that the relationship between King Mohammed VI and Emmanuel Macron are not exactly at their apex. But again, hopefully, silver lining of this situation is that all these countries will mend fences and something good will come out of this. And because one of the most important thing, not one of the most important thing, the most important thing is to help those in need today in Morocco.
Well, that is certainly the case, and we're going to see these numbers go up, as the hours and days go on. We're glad to hear that your family is okay. Abu Bakr Jamai, professor of international relations at the American College of the Mediterranean in Aix-en-Provence. Thanks so much for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you.
Well, the French Embassy in Morocco and French Ministry for Foreign Affairs have set up crisis lines in response to the disaster. The numbers will be on your screen here in just a second. In Morocco, you can call the number 212-537-689-900. And if you're in France, the number is 0143 17 51 00. Well, there have been a series of aftershocks since that initial quake struck late Friday night. In fact, some people are planning to sleep outside tonight because they're afraid of another strong jolt. We get more on that from Siobhan Silk.
Even in Marrakesh, 70 kilometers north of the epicenter, the damage is severe, evidence of the power of Friday's earthquake. It originated in the High Atlas Mountains, a range bordered by fault lines.
These are thrust faults, two plates, two volumes of rock that can overlap suddenly. The two plates are pushing against each other and the pressure builds until it gets to a breaking point, and all at once there is a split. One plate overlaps the other and that produces an earthquake.
This same phenomenon is what caused the deadliest earthquake in Morocco's recent history. That devastated Agadir in 1960, killing 12,000 people. But the strength of Friday's quake was much higher.
The Agadir earthquake of 1960 had a magnitude of around 5.7 to 5.8, but we are talking about another order of magnitude. When you go from 5.8 to 6.8, the energy is multiplied by 30, so it's a very significant difference.
At a magnitude of 6.8, Friday's quake is the most powerful ever measured in Morocco.
And if you're just joining us, we want to remind you of some of the key facts and numbers. The quake had a magnitude of 6.8. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, it's the strongest to hit Morocco in more than 120 years. At this hour, the death toll stands at 1,305. Also, at least 1,800 people were injured. 721 of them are reported in critical condition. Here's more again from Nick Rushworth.
People headed out into the streets, afraid to stay indoors, fearing possible aftershocks after the quake struck. This historic minaret and other buildings in Marrakesh were damaged. The city was just a few dozen kilometers from the epicenter.
We felt the strength and intensity of the tremor in our building 2 or 3 times. People came out into the street right after this in total panic. And there were families who were still sleeping outside because we're very afraid of the force of the tremor.
The epicenter of the quake was southwest of Marrakesh in the province of Al-Houz. This Google map shows the extent of the impact, with tremors felt as far away as Rabat, Agadir and Casablanca, hundreds of kilometers away.
I was on the roof of my house enjoying the fresh air when suddenly I felt vibrations. They seemed really close. At first I heard a metal object fall. I thought it was a cat. But I heard people screaming, and I realized it was an earthquake.
The authorities expect the death toll to rise. Most victims are villagers in mountainous areas in the High Atlas region. Moroccan media report this is the most powerful earthquake ever recorded in the country.
And that's it for now. Stay tuned for continuing coverage of the earthquake in Morocco here on France 24.